Hello and welcome to the STEMCstudio channel. In this video, I'm going to show you the absolute minimum that you need to know in order to be able to get productive with STEMCstudio. There are probably three things that you will want to be able to do. The first is how to create a new project and then save it to your own GitHub account and then retrieve it again from GitHub. The second is how do you bring in a library as a dependency to your project and then make calls to that library. And then the last thing I would say is how can you add new components to your application, such as functions, classes, things like that. If you're new to the STEMCstudio channel and you're just joining us, I think you're going to find this to be a very good introduction to STEMCstudio. And if you're an existing visitor to STEMCstudio, I'm glad to have you back. Okay, let's get started. So there are two ways to create a new project in STEMCstudio. You might start from the Code Now button, and this gives you the ability to create a new project from an existing template. I'm not going to go into this right now. I'm going to actually do it the other way, which is to start from one of the examples. So you can browse an example, and if it looks like it's a good fit for you, then you can copy that example, and that's what we're going to do now. So I click the Examples button. I'm going to find a project that I think is one that I want to start with, and I think I'm happy with this JSX Graph Arrow project. So I'm going to click on it, and that brings it into my workspace. On the left-hand side of the workspace, you can see we have a typical Explorer, and if I click on different files in the Explorer, they become the context editor in the middle of the screen. Over on the right-hand side, you can see documentation, and the documentation is actually the rendering of the README file over here in the Explorer. If you want to run the program, you can hit the Launch Program tool on the toolbar, and we'll do that right now. And there it is. And I could size this, but what I'm also going to do is I'm going to hide the documentation over here on the right. Okay, so I hide that, just size it out the way. This is the project that I want to start with. It looks pretty good to me, and so what I want to do is I want to basically make it my own, because it was an example, and as you can see in the URL, it's actually a gist. It's somebody else really owns it. So how do I make it my own? How do I copy it? Well, go to the project menu and select the Copy Current Item menu item. This will give you the opportunity to rename your file. So let's call this the STEMCstudio minimum. That looks good. So I'm going to hit copy project. And now you can see that in the browser URL, the gist ID has gone, and all you have now is a sort of a vanilla generic URL. Okay, so far so good. Let's make some changes to this project. We'll run it first. Hide the documentation again, and let's say we want to get rid of this link that's down here. Well, we go to the HTML file, we find the relevant piece of code, which is this list down here. I'm just going to select that and then press the delete button, and it's gone. I think the other thing that I'll do is I'm going to hide this copyright symbol that's at the top here. So I'm going to go to the code, I'm going to find where it says show copyright, change that to false, and that's gone. Okay, I think this is a good point to pause and save this to GitHub. Now, if you have a GitHub account, then great, you can go straight ahead and sign into GitHub. If you don't have a GitHub account, you will want to go over to GitHub, and you'll want to sign up for GitHub. Okay, get yourself an account, because this is where we're going to actually store all of our projects. Once you have your GitHub account, hit the sign in button. Now, something that you will not see in the video is you won't see the pop-up window. You'll just have to trust me. My video software is not actually showing the pop-up window. So I enter the username and I enter my password. Hit the sign in button. And there we are, we're signed in. And as you can see over here, it shows my account name on the right-hand side. You might also have noticed that the cloud menu has become active, and now I can hit the upload project to GitHub menu item. And there you go. Our project has been successfully uploaded and it's been associated with a new gist. So what's the gist ID? Well, you hit close, it reloads, and this is the gist ID of our new gist. Now, if you want to go over to GitHub and actually take a look at your gist, just click on the GitHub gist item over here. It's kind of fun to go and explore and see what that is. Okay, so let's go back to the home page, and now you'll see that in local storage, we have two projects. We have our copy that we've made and modified, and that's been saved to GitHub. So it has an updated date on it. And we have our original project. We don't need the original project, so we can delete that. We also have our project here, and we can go back in and open that project, modify it, and upload it again to GitHub when we've made our changes. What you might want to do is you might want to be able to retrieve a project at a future date. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. Let's first delete this project from local storage. We'll do that by clicking the delete button here. And we'll say goodbye to that. But we'll head over to the download button and we'll click that. And in there, you can see that the last project that we created was the STEMCstudio minimum. I can click on that and I've recovered my project. Go back to the home page. Here's the project in local storage. Now I should add that if you make any changes to the project locally, it will be saved in local storage as you go along. Maybe every 10 seconds or so, it saves it to local storage. And it's not possible to overwrite that local storage from by downloading. That's a deliberate design decision so you don't lose your changes. So if you do want to throw away any changes you've made and reload it, then simply delete it from local storage and then go and download it again. Okay, so that is the basic mechanics of how do you create a project, how do you save it to GitHub, and then how do you retrieve it from GitHub. The second thing I want to show you is how do you bring libraries into your project. Now, this project that I'm showing you here already has a couple of libraries in it, actually. One library is the JSX graph library here, the JXG library. And the second one is actually a utility here that is called DOM-ready, which is a way of making sure that you don't try to access the document object model, the HTML interface, basically, before it's really ready. So thoroughly recommend that you use DOM-ready pretty much in all projects, at least until you can know what you're doing and you know if it's safe to do otherwise. It's very easy to use. You just add the DOM-ready project library to your project, and then you use this sort of little incantation where you call ready and you pass it a function. Great thing about DOM-ready is that it also catches any errors and you can log these to the console. So how do you bring in a library? Well, the way you do that is you head over to project settings, click on that, and let's ignore all of this stuff at the top right now and look instead at the bit below, the dependencies. So these are all of the libraries that STEMCstudio knows about and has sort of pre-integrated into its environment. It is possible to actually call other libraries that aren't a priori known to STEMCstudio, but that's a more advanced topic, and really the best way is if the library is available here is to use it from here. So let's take a look and see which libraries are actually used. We see we've got DOM-ready version 1, okay, and we've got JSX graph version 1.2.1. Now I'm going to delete, I think, JSX graph, and I do that by clicking that blank space, and you can see that the version has gone. And then the second field, which defines how the program selects a particular version of JSXGraph has also been deleted. Let's click OK and see what impact that has on the project. So you can see in the project that it no longer knows now what JXG is. That variable, which is actually in the Windows global namespace, is now sort of unknown. Cannot find name, AG. Incidentally, many people I see using STEMCstudio don't realize that you can hover over these error markers on the left-hand side, and they do give very, very good information. Okay, let's go back and add JSXGraph again. So we go into project settings, dependencies, we go and look for JSXGraph. There it is. And the versions that I can pick from are here. So let's go and pick the latest version, which is 1.2.2. And you'll notice that STEMCstudio defaults in the word minor for what's called the upgrade. Okay, so what does this upgrade mean? Well, you have to know something about what's called semantic versioning, which is that these version numbers actually have a very definite meaning. There are 3 numbers and they're separated by periods. And the first number is called the major version number. The second is called the minor version number. And then the third number is called the patch version number. Okay, so what can I do with the upgrades? One thing I can do is I can leave the upgrade blank, and that has a very particular meaning. It says that the only version of JSXGraph that you want to run within your program is exactly 1.2.2. Okay. Why might you do that? Well, you might want to make sure that your program sort of never breaks because of a change to JSXGraph. This is the most conservative setting that you can make. Another alternative you have is to set patch level upgrades. What this means is that you will accept changes to the patch number, for example, 1.2.3, 1.2.4. Those would all be valid versions for your application to run against. And in fact, you're actually saying, I want my application to run against the highest patch number. So this is a kind of a way of saying, I want my application to sort of run with the best version of JSXGraph, but I don't want you to go too far ahead. Another alternative is to select the minor version number. Now, the minor version number allows you to accept changes to the minor upgrade allows you to accept changes to the minor version number. Now, when a minor version number increases, it means that there's a new feature being added to the library, but that feature is backwardly compatible. In other words, it won't break your code. On the other hand, an increase in the major version number is a way of saying this change to this library will actually break some client code if they happen to be using parts of the library that have changed. So minor, in theory, is a very safe way to select a particular library version because you're really going to get the most kind of like current version of the library without without breaking changes. And then the final option you have, of course, is to select latest, in which case the version number becomes irrelevant. It's just going to select the most recent version of the library. Now, the default really is, in most development scenarios, is to use the minor version number. If you feel like being a bit more conservative and going down to patch or even going down to exact, then that's fine. But I typically select minor. The other library that we have is DOM ready here, and the way this has been configured, it was actually configured to be exact. I'm going to set that to minor too. And click OK. And you'll see that when I click OK, the warning has gone. That means that STEMCstudio has been able to load the library, load the type definitions that enabled you to, for example, hover over and get documentation and that sort of thing. All right, so that really deals with how do I bring in a library. The last thing that we'd like to be able to do is to create a function or a class or something like that, and then import it into our program. So the way we do that is we're going to create a new file. I'm going to call it utils.js, say for example, utils.ts. All the TypeScript files get converted into JavaScript files in the process of the compilation that happens behind the scenes. And I'm going to export from this file a function which is called print line, and it takes an argument which we'll call data, which has the type string. And this is the function that we want to use in the index.ts file. And we want to do something like this. We want to write print line hello world. Okay. Now you'll notice here that it says I cannot find the name print line. Did I mean print? No, I didn't mean print. I actually meant that I wanted to import the function that I exported from the other file. So how do we do that? We type import, and then we're going to specify what we want to import, and then we say from, and then this is where we specify the file that we want to import from. Now, the way that you do that is essentially to type in the root of the file name, which is util, with a little period, dot slash, and you can omit the extension. Now, if you do put an extension, you're actually going to have to put in JS, but in most code that people write, they will actually just omit the extension. Let's go back to the curly braces, which specify what you want to import. And I could just type in print line here, but another thing I can do is I can hit Control spacebar, and you see that, well, there was only one thing to import, and that was print line. So great. So our function is there. A little aside down here, you'll notice that the linter has kicked in. Now that there are no real errors, the linter has kicked in and said, hey, you've got a little bit of trailing white space. Sometimes this can be removed by just formatting the document, and indeed it did. So reformatting the document, remove that bit of white space. It actually put a little bit of pretty white space around here. Okay, so let's make this function do something. We'll go in here, and what I'm going to do is I am going to modify the what's called the document object model, which is the tree of nodes that represent the which basically are the instantiation of the HTML. And I'm going to add some element and a text node to the body. Sounds complicated, but it's really pretty simple. So it's going to look like something like this. I find the document object in the scope. I hit a period there, and oh, there's the things that I can pick from. I believe there's one called create text node, something like that. Create text. Yep, let's create text node. Hit enter, and I'm going to construct that on. Well, it has a parameter, and you know the name of the parameter is not important that I match it, but it's called data anyway. So this create text node, and this thing returns text. So I'm going to assign that to a variable like that. Okay. What's going on here? Text is declared, but its value is never read. Okay, no surprises there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a div element in a very similar way. So I'm going to do const div equals document dot, and again, auto completion, create element, hit enter, and the argument for this, could have found out by hovering over, is the tag name is div, and that's created the div element. Now what I want to do is I want to append the text to the div element. And then finally, what I want to do is I want to take this div element and append it to the body of the document. So I'm going to go document dot body dot append child, and I'm going to stick div in there. And there you go. Down in our output, we can see hello world. You'll notice that the file is red, indicating there's some little problem with it. And you can see here we've got a yellow warning. That's a linting error. And it's saying the file should end with a new line. So it's not really essential, but that's the way that linting is set up right now. And I'm just going to hit enter to remove that. There are reasons in professional development why people have consistent ways of ending their files, basically to minimize the difference, makes it easier to compare files. That's not really that important for us. Okay, so now that we've done that, we could maybe hit the format document, but this is about as pretty as it can be. We might want to document this function. So the way that we would do that is we would add a JS doc style comment, a block comment to our code here. And we could say something like print the data to the document body. Or maybe more precisely, we could say it appends the data to the document body. Okay. And since we haven't said what the data is, we should say param data, the string to be appended to the document body. All right, let's just hover over print line, and you can see that we've got nice documentation showing up for our function. And indeed, if we go back to index and we hover over that, we've got nice documentation there too. Okay, great. What we could do, just to be a little bit more explicit here, is we could actually nail down the return type of this function, so that we don't actually try to return something from this function. That should give you an error. There we go. String is not assignable type. So we know this function actually doesn't return anything other than perhaps undefined. And that's it. We've actually exported a function from this file, and we've imported that function into this file. If you don't know, that basically is the essence of what's known as ES6 modules. It was an enhancement to JavaScript that was made not so long ago. And this basically allows you to keep your projects very clean by breaking them up into files and separating the concerns in your project. Well, that just about wraps it up. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was useful in showing you how to create projects, how to save them to GitHub, how to pull them back from GitHub, how to pull in a library, at least a library that is known to STEMCstudio, and we can look at how to do that with unknown libraries in another video. And then finally, how to use ES6 modules to bring in other components in your application. In future videos, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be focusing just kind of coding by example. And so it's going to be a good opportunity if you don't know much JavaScript or TypeScript to learn those. And then we'll also learn different parts of the STEMCstudio user interface as we go along. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope to see you in the next video. If you like this video, hit the like button below. If you want to hear about more videos, subscribe to the channel and tell your friends. Thanks very much. Goodbye. Till next time.